Frame rate reduced to improve video quality. I don't know how I feel about that. Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom, and welcome to my workbench. This is not going to be a repair video. I'm on my way out the door to VCF East. Yes, this is the East Coast's epic throwback event, the Vintage Computer Festival, or VCF East. Alright, so from here in Rhode Island, it'll take me about 5 hours to get down to Wall. I'm doing this Thursday night so that I can be there bright and early at 8 a.m. when the doors open and hit VCF East. I've wanted to do this for several years. This is the first year that I really had the chance to do it. My schedule's lined up, my finances have lined up, everything's been good. So, let's go. We're talking clicky keyboards, chunky monitors, and the rise of the radical GUI, or pixelated Picassos and techie treasures galore. It's amazing, if even slightly esoteric, classes and sessions. I think they know their customer base pretty well. I like talks, I like food, put them in the same place. I think that's a good idea. But anyway, let's take a deeper dive into the incredible talks and workshops at VCFE. The first thing I got to go to, I saw Mark Fisher give a very enlightening talk about bridging the past and the future and exploring how modern hardware and software applications can enhance retro computing. Mark's also a big part of the FujiNet project, so that makes a lot of sense. Then I watched a very intriguing, I learned a lot from it, so that's intriguing, might be underselling it. Talk from Carl Klonch, I hope I said his name right. He shared his story about restoring a 1950s era IBM 1300 series computer. And his talk really did kind of encompass any of that era of IBM computers and what you would need to be looking for. But I think the best takeaway from his talk might be that IBM's schematics at the time were, and I quote, accurate but not helpful. When everyone else was breaking for lunch, I went and took a class on coding on the 8-bit Atari. There was a very dedicated Atari classroom. This was one of 2 sessions I did in there, which I enjoyed both of quite thoroughly. Mark Fisher, I was not expecting to see him twice in the same day, which was nice. Led this over luncher class on it was a very beginner-friendly, from absolutely nothing from the ground up 6502 assembly language class. You know, they had a whole room full of Atari 800 XLs, got to type along with it, had an absolute blast. Yes, all I did was modify some registers and some values in RAM. Doesn't matter. Still enjoyed it. And it's the first time I got to, do assembly on the computer I was working on. So that was actually kind of a neat experience, because I'm used to doing it, burn my EEPROM, put it in my little 6502 computer, turn it on and run the program. After lunch, I went back to the panel hall, because on Friday that was really all you could do. Was the classroom stuff and the panels. The exhibit hall wasn't open, the museum wasn't open yet. To go see Steve from Mac 84 and Ron from Ron's Computer Videos. They did a very funny but very informative class on restoring old classic Macs, which, if you've watched either of them on YouTube for any length of time, you know that is their passion. One of the things that Steve had talked about during his presentation was that your holy grail computer, your dream machine, will be affected by nostalgia, and so your dream machine may be completely different than someone else's dream machine because of a different set of circumstances. And after that, we got to talking, and for me, my dream machine is a Mac LC3. Can't find a whole lot of LC3s. I find a lot of LC2s. Occasionally I come across a Mac LC. I don't see a whole lot of LC3s. I think they were pretty much just like educational computers. But for me, it's because my first job was working on these Macs for a school district. And then they finished out the day with this epic speaker roundtable. Just a bunch of retro content creators, hosted, moderated by Sean from Action Retro. And they just talked about getting into it, getting started, what their startup time was like, and really reiterated over and over again that the only thing stopping you is you. Just get up there and do it, because if you really wanted to stream on Twitch, you can download the Twitch app on your phone and record yourself, stream yourself, just getting out there playing on whatever it is you have. You don't need a giant streaming rig. And I really took that to heart because that's really what I do here. I have a little bit more than that because I have streamed Twitch in the past, but honestly, I just do this for fun, and it happens to be the computer I like to game on. Happens to be good for video editing too. So, I really appreciated that panel personally. And that wrapped it up for day one. Full disclosure, I may have gotten a little excited about the consignment barn. I got there around 9 a.m. right when it opened, and there was already quite a long line. It was totally worth it though, because I snagged myself a sweet K-Pro 2. Yes, I did, and there's something very important about this K-Pro 2, which I'll talk about a little later. And honestly, after I scored that, I was like floating on cloud 9. All the classes were secondary. I grabbed that and an Atari 800 with all the fixins, and yeah, I felt pretty good about my pickup. I did snag myself a spot in the Atari classroom for the FujiNet intro class, and I got to go to a class on a guy who rebuilt a PDP-8 processor, just the processor, with all vacuum tubes, which he had picked up from the MIT flea market, and it looked really cool. Now, granted, he was just doing the processor and everything else was being handled on the Raspberry Pi by emulation, but it still proves it's possible. And then the exhibit hall. This is where I spent the bulk of my time for the next 2 days, because this is where all the really cool stuff is. FujiNet had a table out there. The guys, Tom Cherryholm and Mark Fisher were there. They were rotating around. Whoever wasn't teaching a class was at the table. And I got to talk to them about it because I just sat through the class. And look, you guys did the class with 800 XLs. I have an 800 that's not an XL. Is it still going to work? Is it going to make a difference? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. It'll work just fine. Across the room from them, there was this really, really cool, really wild exhibit about the bootleg clones from Argentina. And I had no idea about this. I mean, I knew, the Sega Master System was huge in South America, and I believe in Argentina specifically, it was, still being produced up until, 2020, and it still had, a big market for it. But these guys were showing me, Commodores and Ataris and Apples that were having all of the parts shipped in, but being built in Argentina. The exhibits were broken into 4 halls. One hall was just vendors, and I didn't really care for that because they were just selling whatever, and you get better deals at the consignment shops anyway. And then there were the 3 halls of exhibits. Halls B and C were the 2 I spent the most time in. The ones I was just talking about were in B, and then in C you had things like the Vintage Computer Federation, the hosts of VCF East, had an awesome display on the evolution of the GUI. Things that really caught my eye. There was a huge display of the WeatherStar computers going all the way back to the beginning. You are of a certain age, you remember watching the Weather Channel when they actually had weather, but they had all of the WeatherStar computers, all the different generations, aligned one to the next, showing the evolution as it went through, and all pulling live NOAA data, still pulling live data and updating the displays in real time. Getting to watch your local on the 8s right there for Wall, New Jersey, and just being completely thrown back to the fact that it worked. It worked exactly like it was supposed to. And you could see all the hardware. And they had, the displays showed exactly what the hardware was, the software was. I was just, shocked. The other corner was the totally normal computing corner. And Sean from Action Retro is all about totally normal computing. It's him and Steve from Mac 84 and all of their favorite possessions, which apparently also includes Ron from Ron's Computer Videos, because they had Ron. Just kidding. Ron's just an awesome guy, and I think he would appreciate that joke. And then day 3, like I said, it was more of the similar. There were less sessions I was interested in, but more exhibits I wanted to go see. The early morning session on day 3, the one I actually got up early and checked out of my hotel to go see at 8 o'clock. I am excited to have my 800 so I can get that online. Excited that they're doing work on Commodore, although it's super early still, so I can get my 128 on there. I'm excited that there's a PC port for emulators, so you can use pretty much any of the emulators of that era and still be able to play with FujiNet. The other big day 3 thing for me was knowing that Usagi Electric would be restoring the Hawk Drive for a Centurion live in the museum right in front of all of us and chatting with us while he did it.
Growing up as a kid, our neighbor had it. Somehow my dad got a hold of it. It's just always been in the garage my whole life. There's this thing that's been sitting in the corner for 30 years, you know? And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do something with that. Because that doesn't cost any money. I can just like take it apart, it's purely mechanical. I can clean it up, repair it, and get it back together and get it going. And like, you know, I pulled the top off of it. There was like a snake skin in there because the snake had decided to climb in and shed its skin inside of there.
Stuff that happens in Texas.
Yeah, that's a very Texan thing to say, I guess.
He was just a blast to talk to. He would just talk to anybody who was in the room, answer questions, all while he was doing work. And then if he was doing anything, there was like the part I got to stand there and watch through, he was doing a lot of polishing and sanding, and so there was a lot of just repetitive motion, so he spent a lot of time talking to us. But when he hit a point where he was doing something and wanted to explain it, he would just stop the conversation, explain what he was doing, show the part he's working on, explain what he's doing again, and then went back to working on it, which I think is probably the best way to do something like that. Remember earlier when I said there was something special about this K-Pro? When I was at the Totally Normal Computing booth, Sean pulled me aside and said, "I saw you walk out of the consignment barn with my K-Pro. Have fun with that." So it's special to me now. Very special. All in all, I had an absolute blast. I had so much fun over the whole weekend. It was just phenomenal. I am planning to go back next year. I'm already making sure that I lay the right groundwork so that Mrs. Real Chef Tom has no problem with me going next year, and maybe drag some of my local retro tech head friends with me. And if I can arrange it, I'd love to make it out to VCF Midwest at some point in the next year or two. Everyone I talked to at VCF East said Midwest is really the show you want to be at. This may be the original, but that's the one you really want to be at. And I get to meet Adrian Black, apparently, so might be worth the trip. But if you are a vintage computer fanatic like I am, then you absolutely need to go next year. It is just, no question, you're going next year. That's it. Let's make a plan. Let's make a party. Let's start a Discord. Let's do something. But if you don't want to wait that long for some more retro tech fun, I will be putting out project videos very shortly. I've got a ton of other stuff I want to get out and I've been working on behind the scenes. I just want to get it all done before I publish it. So if you are interested in any of the projects I want to do or I'm planning on doing here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I generally don't ask for any of the general YouTuber things, but if you could hit the subscribe button, that would mean a lot to me. Thank you.